Hello and welcome, and today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the best bang for your buck Ark Tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Theory, as I find this is just generally a really nice Ark creature to have, and being quite a simple knockout tame and relatively easy to trap with no issues whatsoever, and with obviously basically just one step in the tame method, which is knock it out. You could say two if you say feed it, but on top of that, it really is nothing else, and it is just such a versatile creature. It is a great one for doing the dragon boss fight on the island, obviously, as it is particularly harsh to carnivores, and this being a herbivore which also deals loads and loads of damage, it does work very effectively in that given scenario. And on top of that, my favourite attribute about this creature is its great fibre gathering. Often you can find loads of herbivores out there that will gather berries for days, but no fibre. Obviously the moss chops does exist as well. Depends if you get lucky, if you will tame one of those. Another great suggestion, although maybe not the bang for your buck Ark Tame, considering that they can be a little bit of a pain to tame if you don't find the right ones. And, you know, especially if you're playing unofficial, it can be pretty frustrating sometimes, but they're great fibre gatherers too. Just, I really like the way the Theory does it, and the Theory, in my eyes, is quite easy to tame. Yes, you do have to be level 69.
Nice.
To get it, but that really isn't that bad. Continuing on, I've decided to put the Aloe on this list, and I find loads of people really do like this one, and there might be a bit of a disagreement with what comes later on the list, but that is just my personal preference. We'll get to it when we get to it. I want to talk about the Aloe. This is a very nice, relatively easy to find carnivore. It isn't all too rare, because that does play into the factor. By bang for your buck, I basically mean tames which are really great but easy to tame. I felt that was a bit of a long-winded title, so I decided to change it for the purpose of the video, and I think it works better. Either way, they're not the hardest to find. Just search on any mountainous region really on the island. Ridiculously easy to find in the Highlands biome on Raasclark, though you should have no issues whatsoever. They'll usually be in packs of 3, and the highest level will be determined by the one which has the alpha pack buff, and that's probably the one which you're going to want to tame, or you can just tame all 3 as long as the other 2 aren't really low levels as well, and then you can instantly have yourself a pack of aloes. Sometimes, no matter the level, it is still worth it just to get yourself a pack of aloes to get that pack buff, as yes, you do need 3 to make a pack of aloes, and I'm pretty sure in Ark a pack of anything. And once you've got it, it is a very powerful, nice, easy to use carnivore that is versatile, very mobile, very efficient to use. I might have already said that, and they do a heck of a lot of damage, and the bleed ability as well. Sadly, that doesn't affect bosses in this case, but still, you know, there's another creature on this list which does that exact thing, and it's there for said reason. They still have the bleed ability though for all other creatures, and are great boss fighting ones because of their reasonably high health, quite nice mobility, and very high damage, especially considering their size and ease of taming. So the Spinosaurus, an all-time favourite of mine, and I was contemplating to put the Rex here instead. I guess there's a brief honourable mention for it, but I always did prefer this creature, and I still do prefer it, and I use it in pretty much any scenario where you might want to use a Rex instead, which is boss fighting scenarios. I just love this creature for them. They are just so much more mobile than a Rex, and they tend to do a little bit more damage than a Rex as well, and once I bred them up a little bit and got some health mutations, their health is pretty much incomparable. Yes, you could probably get some higher health on a Rex, but still, that health is easily high enough for pretty much any boss fight in the game, apart from obviously all of the bosses on Extinction. Just use a Stego for the Forest Titan, which I've never actually done before, but apparently the TLC ability it got, the impaling, is absolutely OP. Whoever said that in the comments, thanks for the tip. The next time I do the Forest Titan, I will definitely use said method, and obviously you use the Quetzal for the Desert Titan as well, and you could use Gigas and Crocodonsauruses for the Ice Titan, possibly not, but the Ice Titan I've usually used something like a mech or something around those things. Either way, talking about the Spino again and not some other creatures that I like to use or have been suggested for me to use on Extinction bosses. The Spino is that creature, incredibly mobile, has a TLC as well, it's got the hydration buff, makes it pretty great for the Moda. It also can turn 360 on the spots, deals a heck of a lot of damage, like I've said, more than the Rex in the cases that I've seen, and they're not too difficult to tame. Yes, a Rex is easier, but I'm thinking you're getting a lot more value with this creature than a Rex, at least in my opinion. Also make some quite great underwater caving creatures as well, if that's something you want to consider, because on the island, all the underwater caves are pretty massive, so they really are a bang for your buck tame in my opinion. And at number 7, I've decided to put the Carno, and this is where some of the dispute may happen of like, why am I putting the Carno above the Aloe? Well, in my opinion, the Carno is much easier to tame. On ASA that makes little difference because of the baby taming methods, I know, but you know, killing a Carno is still a lot easier than killing an Aloe, and I find they are very effective creatures. This is a lot of nostalgia playing in, of course, but I do have to factor in my opinions to this list, and the Carno is just an opinion of which I have, which I find is just so strong for me that I simply have to put this creature on the list. And I do recommend, like, just as quite a first carnival for PvE players, for PvP players, I've honestly got no idea, and I admit that I have no idea what's going on with PvP Ark, but for PvE Ark, I would say that the Carno is quite a nice creature to have. You can chill around on it, you can definitely get some work done with killing some creatures, harvesting all kinds of meat and hides, and in the early game it really is effective, and you can even do some bosses with it as well if you want to. They do the bleed ability, not to bosses of course, but to everything else that you'll find on the way, and they're pretty mobile, pretty fast, and I really do like their size, similar to the Megalosaurus as well, which is quite a nice creature. The only reason why I didn't put it on this list is they do spawn in caves, and that is a little bit too much for me to put them on this list, but I guess maybe in like spot 11 or something around that, because I really do like those creatures, and they also are a bit rare on the island as well, which is why I refrained from it. But yeah, Carno, really love this thing. So the Thyla, one of those creatures where you really can't go across most maps without this thing if it does spawn on the map, and obviously you've got these Shadowmane as well, but their taming method is way too difficult for me to even consider putting them on the list, and I know their value is very high, but so is the demands for the taming method, so they simply can't be put on this list. But let's stop talking about these Shadowmane, shall we, and let's just stop me being off topic altogether and just get back to talking about the Thyla. These things that spawn in the Redwoods biome on the island, they're relatively abundant, and a high level one isn't all too hard to find, and at least I don't struggle with it. Just look on the trees, obviously be careful. I'll probably go in on an RG or something like that, fly through, just scope the area, use a spyglass, and find a Thyla of a level which I find to be quite reasonable. I'm usually, if I'm thinking level 150 being the max, then I would go for anything really over a 125, around that kind of thing. But obviously for me, I use, well, it's probably not obvious actually, but I use 50 times difficulty, so that means my creatures are level 1500, just the thing I've been doing. So when I'm looking for Thylas, I'll be looking for ones which are over level 1250. I usually go for 1400s and ones like that, because they tend to be more desirable to me. Either way, let's stop with the talk of that. I feel like I'm getting really off topic on this one, but anyway, the Thyla does the bleed ability, which is quite nice. Sadly, they can't go into bosses because of their wall climbing abilities, but they are very agile, very mobile, versatile creatures. They can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. Really does make them effective mounts, and that is why I decided to put them on this list, as they are a very basic knockout tame. At number 5, we have got the Crystal Wyvern, and come on, it is very deserving of the list, at least in my opinion. Some of you may be like, well, the Wyvern just has to be better, doesn't it, the normal Wyvern, because it's got a harder taming method, and you know those Wyverns must just be better generally, and I find that is a common misconception, at least from what I've heard. And the Crystal Wyvern is one creature which I find is really disrespected. It comes on a literal free DLC, and they're ridiculously easy to tame and ridiculously versatile. You really should be using these things, at least obviously in my opinion. Obviously do consider that through this, but I would recommend getting the Blood Crystal Wyvern. I just like that elemental ability the most, but the Emerald Crystal Wyvern is quite a good suggestion as well. The Tropical Crystal Wyvern, maybe not quite as much, but there is still value in this thing as just a general travelling mount. They also need no saddle whatsoever. Sadly, no natural armour like the Shadowmane, but no Wyvern has armour. I think there is some mods out there, or some item that's maybe vanilla. There's like a rock sort of thing that you can put in a thing, and then it gives you like 5 armor or something. Either way, it's very minute if there is on an official, but that probably is like an S plus mod thing. I play with loads of mods these days that I can't really keep track of what's vanilla and what's not. But yes, their tame method is very simple. Haven't actually talked about it yet, but I'll talk about it very briefly. It's passive tame, you've got to be level 60, knock out one of these things to get the prime crystal, and then again, passive tame, you've got to feed those things. But then once you've done it, you got yourself a wyvern for a much cheaper tame method and with better abilities. The RG, what a creature, really. It cannot be disrespected for all of its attributes, and it has been here for a long while, and it has kept us satisfied, at least me satisfied, for an awful long while. And I love these creatures, and with a very simple trap and some trank arrows, you're going to have no issue with taming these things whatsoever. Maybe it can be a little bit awkward to get them into a trap, especially on ASA, but I find it really isn't too much of an issue, and I can do it with relative ease and no difficulty. I did a little bit in the beginning when I started using traps to tame things, which was actually way too recently, and I think that was about 3 or 4 years ago. Previously to that, I would just, or prior to that I should say, I just knocked these things out just in the open air and like chased them around on a griffin whenever those came out, or just, you know, hoped and waited. But the trap method is definitely a lot more efficient, a lot better obviously, and with those, the RG just being such a great creature, it does deserve the list. Of course, it has a portable smithy as a saddle. Great if you're doing caving, you don't want to go back all the way to your base, just have some smelted metal in its inventory, and then boom, you can repair it with your metal items. You can carry a wealth of creatures as well. They've got weight reduction, things like metal, crystal and obsidian, so if you pair it with an Anki and a Dodig, or either or really, because you can't carry both at the same time, you can get yourself loads of metal, crystal, stone and obsidian, and even more flint and wood and thatch and all of that. They also do have a nice regen buff as well. If you kill something and eat said dead body, it will come in a lot more handy than you might expect. At number 3, we have got the Baryonyx, and I really do love this creature. It is just so deserving of this spot in my opinion. It is the ideal caving creature for me, and with a simple knockout tame like this, it really does deserve to be on the bang for your buck Ark Tames. It is the only real downside, I should say, to its tame method is the fact that it spawns in the swamp biome, and it can be particularly hostile, especially with rhino gnathers and all of those things. And obviously you do need fish to tame this thing, but I don't find that is too much of an issue, as pseudocants are very abundant from all of my exploration of the Ark map. You really shouldn't worry about that too much. And then once you've tamed one, you've got yourself an extremely agile mobile tame, which is capable of just an awful lot. It is the best caving creature, like I've said. Yes, you can say the Shadowmane is great as well, but the fact that this is so much easier to tame and a lot more accessible to people considering the map that it spawns on, it really just takes the crown all the time, and it still does not fail in the water. The Shadowmane is a great underwater creature as well, but the Baryonyx definitely can do it as well. Obviously it's a bit of a pescivore in a way. It eats fish. You would expect it to swim very well, and it can stun creatures up the size of a Megalodon with its second attack. Very nice, neat creature. At number 2, we've got the Deinonychus, and you might be saying, well, the Deinonychus is much harder to tame, and it's not just a simple knockout one. Well, yes, but I find if you have yourself a grappling hook at hand or some kind of basic flyer, then this one really isn't either. Essentially, go to the Chalk Cliffs on Vaguero, a free DLC, so very accessible to everyone apart from, I think, Switch and mobile players at the moment. Not sure with the DLC situation for Switch players at the moment. Do you have Vaguero or not? Comment that down below, but mobile players, of course, won't, you know, what mobile be like. Hopefully that gets revamped for all of those people waiting on it. But yes, then once you've done that, you're going to want to raise that egg, and it can be done with just some torches to start off with. Unofficial, yes, it will be a pain because it will take a lot longer, but I find if you're playing on single player, this really isn't too bad of a tame. And your first one, you don't need to worry about imprints and all of that. You could just get one, and you can still reap a lot of the benefits, because you're probably not going to be doing bosses when you're like level 40, level 50. It is a little bit later on, but if you get that bit of a grind on in the early stages on Vaguero, you can get these things pretty quickly, within 5 hours even, if you're like really going for it. And if you're really going for it, you could probably get it in less than 2 hours, depending on what your rates are for your raising, because I am factoring all of that into the time as well. Once you've tamed one, they can deal bleed damage to bosses, which is just so OP. They're great traveling mounts. They can scale any kind of wall, vertical cliff. They take no fall damage. They have the pack buff, and in my opinion, they're not too difficult to tame. Just takes a little bit of effort, but then apart from that, you're going to get yourself the best bang for your buck, apart from the creature which is next on the list. And at number 1, we have got the Maywing. Considering that their saddle is unlocked at level 18 and they can be tamed with some trank arrows and just a couple of signs to trap them in, then these do have to really top the list. They are the best travelling mounts out there, hands down. Nothing can beat them. They are fast, agile gliders, yes, not flyers, but still, actually, with the Maywing, if you get the technique right, you don't need an awful lot of elevation, if any really, to keep them gliding over those flatter planes. I have got it in a bit more of a higher gradient area just for the purpose of the B-Rock. Kind of makes it look a little bit more impressive with everything kind of gliding around, but the fact they're unlocked at level 18 in terms of their saddle level, it is absolutely insane. And you'll find with Gen 2, a lot of creatures are very OP, and this is actually, I'm pretty sure, the only Gen 2 creature on the list, but it really is the best bang for your buck Ark Tame. Just so easy and so effective. The best travelling mount out there, like I've said. They also do act as a portable feeding trough, so for you people that do loads of breeding out there, these are going to come real handy. The Gigantoraptor will help out as well, but maybe not quite as much as the Maywing, especially considering how much easier the Maywing is to tame. I know I keep going on about it, but it really is so easy. And they can also glide across the top of the water, not the worst swimmers in the world, and gather berries too. The top 10 best early Ark Tames. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Rex, as I find this is generally a very admirable creature to have in any given scenario, and it's been in the game for just such a long while. It's been in the game since it's been released, so it's almost been in the game for 9 years now. It's a lot of games in one sentence, isn't it? But either way, this is the creature which would get you through all your bosses. This is the creature that you would look up to because you're like, come on, we'd have to get yourself a Rex, because the Rex is, or at least one of the gold creatures that you would be going for in the early stages of Ark, and it really still does stand up to that to some regards today, although it has lost a little bit of its popularity with ease of taming and other creatures coming out, which you might just say are simply better. But there were some other good options at the time. Obviously things like UTs and all of that didn't exist at all back then, and you know, that's a 2017 creature, which is far too late for this list. I'm pretty sure all the creatures on this list are 2015, but there might be a few that maybe just peek into the 2016 era. Next up, we have got the Quets. As I found when this dropped, still in 2015, at least when I checked the dates the last time, it was still 2015, and it really does hold up as being a really great Ark Tame, and it did kind of shake the scales a little bit when it released. Nothing really like it had been released before, and that's why it really stands so well as a creature. Like, look at this thing. It is a flying animal in which that you can put a platform saddle on the back of it. You could build your own base on the back of this thing. That was just so mind-blowing at the time, and it really deserves a place on this list for that for me. But due to it just being a little bit later on, and then also a nerf quite soon after, I do have to demote it quite a lot. And there are just some other creatures which I thought were a lot more exciting, and this concept was definitely very exciting to me, but it didn't really grip me the most. But I still have to put it in here, as it did make a lot of impact to a lot of Ark players. But I rarely used this thing at the time, and I rarely use this thing now, and I rarely have. I'm sure we all know the Dimorphodon. This actually made a massive impact on me when this was first released into the game. I was like, wait, what? This tiny thing, and it can just do so much damage and attack creatures. And I used this all the time. I would have like a whole big massive pack of Deinonychus behind me, and then boom, like that, they would all go in on those creatures. And yes, I definitely lost a few in my time, but I really did enjoy using these creatures. A very nice, neat addition, and still a 2015 Ark Tame. In at number 7, we have got the Ichthyosaurus, and this really did captivate me as someone who enjoyed the Ark Ocean at the time, and I maybe know that's not the best thing, especially for a beginner, to look out to, because, you know, the Ark Ocean is a very hostile place, but back then there really wasn't all too much in it and to it, and you didn't get, obviously, those birds, I can't remember the name of them now, that would steal all your stuff. Not sure when the jellyfish and electric eels were added, but you did have like plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, megalodons, and obviously the ichthyosaurus when it was added. At least I'm pretty sure it wasn't around once the game was released, but still a 2015 creature nonetheless, I'm sure of. This was the first creature, as long as I'm right, to include the passive tame, and that added a lot to the sense of the game, and it was a really cool ability, and I still remember it to this day. The passive taming ability, or not really ability but method, was a nice thing to have, and it really felt like the game was evolving, pun intended, because obviously the title has evolved in it, and it was a nice step in the right direction for us, and we really enjoyed this creature. And I say we because everyone that I know when this came out was really excited about this creature. It was a fast, agile underwater mount that could be tamed really easily, and it offered a lot of support with underwater exploration. Very good early tame. Speaking of the Megalodon, I've decided to put on this list as well, as I really did love this creature. This was the first underwater mount I ever tamed. Named it Bruce, obviously, because you've got to name it Bruce. The shark in Jaws was called Bruce, so you've got to name all your sharks Bruce. At least that's the way that I look at it. What's your name for your Megalodons, actually? Because I want to know. Comment that down below in the description, or in the comments, actually. You can't comment in the description. Don't know why I said that, but yeah, comment that down below. Would you name your Megalodons, or do you have any funny or interesting names for any of your creatures? As I have a couple, I've probably hinted a few of them in the videos, but I want to know what yours are, because I know people that have loads of weird names for creatures. I'll give you one right now. The Titanoboa, no Titanoboa, it's a danger noodle. Always, that was one of my favourites. The Megalodon has since seen a TLC though, since its release, and now it does the bleed ability, but I still really loved it back then. I didn't even know what a bleed ability was back in those days. As far as I'm concerned, that wasn't in the game at all, apart from maybe the Giga had it when it released, something like that, but that might have been a later edition as well. The Giga was also later on the list, by the way, but let's continue. Now, I'm sure we all know what our first flight was, and in number 5, I've decided to put the Pteranodon slap bang in the middle, because I feel like it deserves this spot on the list. It will be your first flyer in Ark. At least it was the first flyer in Ark that you would be taming back in the day, as, to be honest, pretty much everyone was playing on the official rates, really, unless you were playing single player. I think there was still that 2.5 extra multiplier since the game had been released. Either way, not too sure. The grind was definitely on back in those days though, and you'd have to grind a lot to even get yourself a Pteranodon, let alone an RG, but we'll get onto that later in the list as well, by the way. And this was just pretty much your only first flyer that you'd be getting. You would bowler it or trap it in some way, and then after that you would knock it out, and then boom, you get that saddle. And that chitin keratin was the hardest part getting this thing, probably, at least in my opinion. Obviously getting to the level of the saddle was just a tremendous exercise to get to at the time, as well as getting like 35 or 40 I think it was, because they grouped levels and 5s and 10s really in those stages of the game. Like you get loads of stuff at level 25, and then you get loads of stuff at level 30. Kind of glad they changed it, because you get stuff at all different levels, and obviously it's a lot more organized now. Did you prefer the old system? Do you prefer the new system? Give me your take on that, because I'm definitely a very new system for Ark stuff, but you know, your preference might be the old stuff if that's your thing. Would you rather just get loads of stuff? Actually, let me rephrase this. Would you rather get loads of stuff at level 25, or get stuff at level 21, 22, 23, 24 and 25 just as a collective? Or would you rather just get everything at 20 and then 25? Would that be better for you, or would that not be better for you? Comment that down below, because I'm inquisitive. Continuing on, I have decided to put the Spinosaurus, as I really did look up to this creature in my early stages of Ark. You might think, well, the Rex is that go-to all-time creature where it's like, you know, the Rex is my goal tame, that is the only creature I'm going to go for. Why possibly would I go for anything else? Well, the Spino was really one of my go-tos back in the day. It just seemed bigger and scarier and able to do more damage, and just a beefier creature. It really just was one of those tames where I was like, I really do love it for all of its attributes, and I did definitely enjoy it as an Ark creature. To have this thing on your side was absolutely insane. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and when I first tamed one, I was on top of the world. I couldn't care less about my Rexes. Obviously I still kept care of them, but the Spino was the new business in town. It could just do everything that I needed it to. It was a really great underwater tame as well, so I felt the Ichthyosaurus and Megalodon were a little bit more obsolete, although I still did use them quite a lot, as you know, you could get around still pretty easily with those. And you know, I had that kind of underwater base setup that Squid had in his old Ark videos from back in the day as well. I did actually find that to be quite nice for me actually, but the Spino still did kind of replace a lot of creatures for me in a way, or at least take a lot of the attention away from them, you could say. And again, this creature has had a lot of TLC, mainly just actually the form of one TLC since it's been released, a model change as well on top of all of that, and it really is for the better. It is a much better creature now than it was back in 2015, but still I really did love it, and it was a really great early addition to Ark, and I'm pretty sure it was definitely, actually I'm like definitely confident that it released with the game. In number 3 we've got the Carno, and I just love this creature to death back in the day. I really did just sort of need one of these things. I was basically just completely reliant on having a creature like the Carno for me. It was a go-to of mine, and it still is a go-to of mine. It is held to the test of time, and I really do love it as a creature that came out in the very early stages of Ark. Again, very confident that this was just released with the game. It has also had a lot of TLC too, in the form of one TLC update, where now it's got the bleed ability, and it just generally is a bit more well-rounded. I'm not sure if it's had a model update. It definitely had a texture update at some point midway through 2015, maybe going into 2016 at that point, and that was actually quite exciting to see. But the Carno really did just excite me as a creature, because I had loads of raptors at the time, but they kept getting killed, and it really wasn't something which I wanted to keep taming. And I saw the Carno and I was like, right, I'll get one of those. Looked at where the saddle level was, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't, but I was like, no, I'll still get one. And then it followed me around everywhere once I tamed one, of course, and I would take it on metal runs and all of that, and just let it attack some things, get its level up, because that's kind of just what I did to level up creatures back then. You know, I just take them around with me and just tell it to kill things. It really did also just make my life a whole lot easier as well, which just added to the overall benefit of this creature and how much I loved it. And then when I finally got that saddle, it was just so nice to ride around on these creatures as well. And then I could progress onto things like Rexes and Spinos, because allos weren't a thing at this time whatsoever. I think they're a 2016 addition to Ark, and the Carno really did rule the roost, and I still think it's quite high up there for me, and actually for me, superior to the allo. In number 2 we've got the Argentavis, and this is again gone through TLC with a model update and a whole host of new features. Not sure if I actually did have the Smithy as a saddle when it first released. I think the Castoroides was the first one to gain that, but maybe it gained it at the same time or at a later date when the TLC stuff happened. And I'm not sure if it had all the weight reduction, but it definitely had a very high weight stat, and it could pick up a huge amount of tames, much more than something like a Pteranodon, and it really was just an upgraded Pteranodon in my eyes. More stamina, more weight, and because you could crank the speed on these things, because movement speed on flies was still a thing. Really do wish that that was still a thing that you could do, because I just loved it so much. And I still, obviously, every time I'm playing single player or if I'm running a server or something, I will always have flyer speed leveling on, and obviously player speed leveling now if I'm doing ASA, which actually I do little of. I mainly stick to Survival Evolved, because I'm just enjoying it a lot more right now, and I am playing through Gen 1, and you can't really do that on Survival Ascended at the moment. I'm playing through it again, obviously. I have done Gen 1 before, and the RG really just was the kind of gateway to the best fire on the map, and that's why the Quetzal really didn't land too much for me, because I felt the RG did everything it needed to do for me, and I didn't need something like the Quetzal. Yes, the Skybase was very cool and inventive, but maybe not quite what I wanted. And in number 1 we've got the Giga, because this is, in my opinion, really deserving of this spot. It is just a go-to Ark creature for me, or at least it was back in the day. Now I kind of tend to stick to the Carcharodonsaurus And come on, this thing still released in 2015, yes, later on in the year, and it was an absolute monster. It was just so fun to get. The Rex and the Spinos sort of seemed a bit obsolete with a creature like this. It was so massive, and it might have done the bleed ability back then, but I'm not sure. The wild ones, obviously, because the tame ones had no bleed ability whatsoever. And obviously, the wild ones were a lot more powerful than once you got the tame ones. But you didn't really notice that at the time. You would just absolutely decimate all the creatures in the area. And that rage buff was actually a really cool, nice, neat ability that you'd be crediting a lot of the time. At least I was. I thought that was a very cool addition. And it really made the Giga more immersive as a creature. Where now it just kind of seems to be an annoyance. And it really didn't feel like its stamina was too awful back in the day. I never really encountered that all too much. I'm not sure if it was reduced or something like that, or just simply a placebo on my part, but I really do find that with stats like stamina and weight, they always felt higher back in the day. I'm not really sure why though. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you all have enjoyed, as I've definitely enjoyed making this one. As always, comment down below what is the best early or OG Ark tame to you, and if you didn't agree with this list, then put your 10 down below in the comments, obviously not in the description, and I'll see you later.